Did you know that Google personalizes many searches by city and Also Asked is the only tool to access live People Also Asked data at city level? Try for free at alsoasked.com.
I was going to say that SEO with Fat Joe is as peaceful as this, but then the birds are all having fights.
Tired of SEO guesswork? Quadra's AI agent goes deeper to uncover high-impact optimizations and completes hours of SEO in minutes. Get started now.
My name is Ray. I've been in the SEO space for about 18 years now. I come from a data engineering and software engineering background. So I'm basically a data guy. We're going to get a little bit geeky today, looking at a lot of different data points. I basically agree with everything that I heard so far today. Obviously, we're in the middle of a huge shift with regards to how search is performed. I've been in SEO overall, like I said, almost 20 years, and this is the first time we're seeing Google's monopoly, effective monopoly challenged in the first time in a real way. And it's not just companies with a bunch of money. We've seen that before. It's not just a different type of interface. We've seen that a little bit before, but it's an entirely new technology and entirely new ways of searching and interacting with information. So the big question, for context, we work with companies that are trying to figure this all out almost in real time, very competitive industries. And a lot of this really matters to them, trying to understand how their users, their searchers are going to be performing things. So the big question on everyone's mind is this hegemony that Google has enjoyed so far appears to be being challenged. To what degree? That's kind of an open question. There's lots of different ways of looking at it. Long term, are there going to be more than one winner on this? Is it going to be, ChatGPT, Perplexity? When you ask my opinion about this, at least as of today, I don't think Google can just pack it up and go home. But I think we do see a real chance of at least one dominant player emerging in addition to Google. So when we start looking at the trends around this, you see lots of different articles. This is one that just came out recently on Adobe's site, looking at the analytics data, these huge traffic spikes. Obviously, it helps to keep in mind that the baseline of this is effectively zero within the last couple of years. And overall, to be honest, traffic from Gen AI search is still very small, less than 1% of the overall traffic volume. But there's still some questions I think that we should be asking about this. One is, how are younger generations searching? How is everybody starting? Like anyone in this room, I would be curious to know how many people really still use Google as their first destination for a search. I don't. I was on, DuckDuckGo and stuff before, but like traditional search versus Gen AI search, I never go to a traditional search engine for most of my stuff day to day, and I'm not even young, so I'm sure there's a lot of changing behavioral patterns. The other thing is traffic really our main KPI going forward? There's a lot of conversation about this right now. Is it traffic? Is it impressions? Is it clicks? How do you measure that? This is something that Brand mentions. Nobody really has a great answer for this. There are a lot of challenges in actually getting good data on this in the first place. And zero click no longer just applies to Google SERPs anymore. So there's zero click within the context of chat responses from ChatGPT, from Perplexity, and all of these other engines. So a lot of questions. I don't have a ton of answers for all of those today, but we're going to look at some of the data and start to tease out exactly how some things are playing out with regard to how you can potentially improve your visibility within these new experiences. So one of the things that I always like to talk about is the context of the search experience. Obviously, long ago and still today, which I'll talk about more in a minute, we had the 10 blue links. Modern SERPs are obviously much more complex. ChatGPT, Perplexity, all these new AI interfaces are an entirely different context. Searcher behavior is very different in all of those as well. Weirdly, and I never thought I would be saying this again, but I'm going to show you why in a minute, is that the 10 blue links are still relevant. And one of the things that I'll mention as a takeaway toward the end here is it's really important at this stage of the transition in technology that we need to be able to keep multiple paradigms in our head at the same time. I'd love to be able to sit up here and draw a hard line in the sand and say this is the way things are always going to be every single time. Right now, looking at the data, it's not really how it's playing out. Obviously, modern SERP features is something I've talked about a lot before, if you've ever seen me talk here. And we talk a lot about what are the different factors that drive click-through rates, what is the impact of visual position, we talk about all that. And the question for that part of the conversation is, are they going to matter within these new experiences? So far, I would say no, but we are starting to see what probably as SEOs we would call SERP features in Gen AI experiences. Perplexity is kind of leading the way on this. You see much richer experiences in their interface more than anything else. So I believe that we will continue to see a proliferation, I'm losing my voice today, proliferation of SERP features in these new Gen AI experiences. So, I've been writing software and building data systems for this market for a long time now, and it kind of feels like I was doing things 20 years ago where back then it was like, oh, you can get ranking data, amazing. Now it's kind of like, oh, you can get visibility data on ChatGPT or Perplexity. And it's kind of an achievement, but it's not going to last very long. We're just all kind of figuring out the initial pipelines for collecting this data. But one of the big challenges, I think, in helping people to understand how valuable, how effective they're being for their customers is there is no real equivalent of Search Console for these search engines, these search experiences. We don't even know if there ever will be. Right now, they have zero incentive to actually deliver something like that. So it's probably going to be years before we see anything on that. So the narrative around measurement has to move toward clarity. We're not there yet. We're going to start to see that become a big topic. So let's dive into some details. I think one of the dirty secrets that is not often discussed is that AI search currently depends on traditional search organic indexes. And there are two reasons for that. One, as previous speaker just talked about, the training data is almost always out of date. This is 4.0. Depending on which model you're looking at, you're going to get different dates. But this one is almost 2 years out of date. And also, there's still hallucinations. This particular hallucination has been fixed, but I've seen a lot of other ones in the last few days even. So what has kind of emerged as the standard process to get more relevant and accurate, semi-accurate data is probably many of you here know this acronym RAG, stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. It's basically what it's doing is the language model, the LLM, is going out and doing a live search on Google or Bing or any of these search indexes, pulling in the relevant data, deciding within the context of that experience what to show to people. So this helps these engines to solve this problem of relevancy and accuracy to a certain degree. They basically combine the data, give it to the user, and you get data. So from that perspective, and I'm going to show you some data that demonstrates this in a very concrete way, Google and Bing still weirdly are kind of the backbone of AI search right now. So depending on which model, which company you're talking about, obviously this has different things, but the majority of the players are still very much interacting with these engines. ChatGPT as an example, citation links. So when you go to the chatgpt.com, you search for something, you ask for links, you're going to get citations on the right-hand side. You can expand that out. These are basically just coming from Google, and we see this all the time. I think what is surprising is that most people think that it's only using Bing in their API to some degree, but that's it's actually the minority of cases now, and that's changed. And what AI overviews are in Google is just basically the same RAG pipeline. They're just using their own language models. They're using their own organic index to provide these type of results and the citation links. So we did a data study on this. We ran this for about 10,000 prompts or keywords or queries across 17 different industries, e-commerce brands and publishers. And we did it for Google, Bing, ChatGPT, and Perplexity for the same queries. And we're going to talk about how we gather the data first, and we're going to then move into some of the results. So the first thing is when, obviously, this is going to sound like a very obvious thing to anyone in search, but it gets a little bit lost in the weeds when it comes to Gen AI conversations and people who are not coming from a traditional search background. But the key to measuring visibility, of course, is knowing what your audience is asking. So in that regard, prompt research, query research, obviously, is like the new keyword research. The question is, where do you get good data for prompt research? There's all these tools for keyword research and traditional SEO. We have Keyword Planner, we have Search Console, we have all the different tools that are out there. We don't really have a great set of data yet for prompt research. Here is an instance where, yet again, Google has a very powerful advantage. Their database of intentions, probably many have heard that phrase, is also their database of interactions. As we all know now, the lawsuit have come out, the leaks have come out. We all know that Google is collecting user interaction data, and they have by far the greatest data competitive advantage of anybody on the planet about what users do, what they search for, what they ask for next. And so all these things are going to give them a tremendous advantage. So our approach to this, when we conduct these studies, we did it last year for AI overviews, and we're doing it now for ChatGPT and so forth, is basically just mine the data that look more like the type of queries that you're going to ask versus just traditional keywords. So people also ask data is a pretty good source for this. As a side note, Google also knows what people are most likely to buy, so it'll be interesting when more of this data continues to work its way into their responses as well. So the questions to AI search engines, they look a lot like informational queries to us. Longer query lengths. There is a much lower, almost zero in most cases, measurable search volume per query, unless you're looking at things like clickstream. And you can also use SERP data to tie the informational queries back to commercial intent. So this can be used for prompt discovery, and this is how we run it. We basically, when we start looking at topics and brands and things to look for, we do a bunch of searches for source keywords, and then basically we run that through our SERP analytics and get all the people also asked questions out of that. You can start with whatever intent you're looking for. You can target search volume of the source keywords, and from there you can mine each one of the questions from every SERP that is in there. Those then get turned into prompts, and we have a way to help you basically get all this, but anyone can do this with whatever data they're using. And you can source this, you can filter this back to those original source keywords that have that commercial intent if that's what you're looking for. And one of the things that's interesting is there's actually, across a wide variety of topics and keywords for a given site or a given industry, there's actually quite a bit of clustering across these queries. You see the same questions repeated across different SERPs. So that can be a clue to help understanding what type of topics are going to be relevant for each other. And so that brings us to our data study and how we ran this. So again, we're looking at about 10,000 prompts overall. And we are working on a white paper on this. We always like to do that as part of our data study. So we'll be announcing that when that's ready. And what we found was, in general, very surprisingly, we started to get hints of this before we ran this, but very surprisingly was that when you do a search on something in ChatGPT, for example, they are using Google's index more than half the time. And Bing, which was always kind of thought of the main standard for this, is only about 14% of the time for this data set. Obviously, you have to run it for your own data. And each, ChatGPT, Perplexity, they are all building their own custom indexes. So we see that about 34% of the time in the case of Google. I'm sorry, in ChatGPT. And in the case of Perplexity, about 45% of the time for their custom indexes. So Perplexity probably has a larger index than OpenAI does, at least one that they're using on a regular basis. So then you get into this question of how do you measure visibility or share of voice. Share of voice has been one of those metrics that is really nice for SEOs and for data people because it translates well to non-search people, non-technical people as well. People understand share of voice in other contexts, whether it's brand or paid spend and so forth. So this gets used quite a bit. The challenge with share of voice in this context, going back to what I was talking about earlier on the context within the experience, is that there is no CTR model. There's no real traffic data. You can look at some clickstream, data, but it's much more difficult to get an understanding of what that looks like. But it's still useful because it's better than not having anything. The other thing that was really interesting as a result of this study, there's more that I won't have time to talk about today, but there is a surprising non-correlation between ranking number 1 or in the top 3 in Google or Bing and being that top position within ChatGPT or Perplexity. What that points to, there's a lot of re-ranking going on. And this is to complete what I was talking about earlier. You have your search index being used by your foundational model. And what's going on is despite the, how stale the training data is, there's still a ranking system that's going on in the user experience, the product known as ChatGPT or Perplexity. And one of the things that I always like to do is you can just ask them how they work. Sometimes they tell you, it's always fair to assume they're lying to you to some degree, but you can kind of interrogate it one way or another to get more data. And one of the things, I know it's a little hard to read, but basically what this is saying is how do I rank results? I submit a query. I submit a query to the Bing API. Haha, of course you don't most of the time. And then I synthesize it one way or another. And then I called it out. I said, actually, we know that you're using Google about 50% of the time. And it said, yeah, okay, so I do this too. And talked about what that looks like. There's a whole talk I can do on that. I don't have time for it today, but it's a really interesting topic that I think is worth playing with. So my main takeaway today, one of my 4 main takeaways actually, is going back to this original context of, okay, we're in this big shift from traditional search to Gen AI. So what should we do? I talk with teams who are freaking out about this on a regular basis, and they're all like, we just got to go all into ChatGPT. And it's like, well, I mean, look at the traffic. Well, what are your plans for the next, 2 years? That being said, I think we all know that, over the next few years, people are going to shift more and more to these experiences. So we're kind of in this weird phase where you have to do both and you have to learn how to get good at both. But you don't want to just abandon your dominant traffic sources for your business to chase these trends without having a plan to transition over. The other thing is recognize this, like I said, as a time of transition. The next few years are going to be wild. I think we all know that. We're all doing our best to catch up as quickly as possible on this. That makes it really important, as I said before, to keep multiple paradigms in your head at the same time. And this sounds maybe a little bit contrary to my first point, but I think you have to balance both together. Be quick to test and experiment with your own data. You can read all the data studies you want. We like to create them, but at the end of the day, what matters is your own audience. What matters is your data, what you're able to see with your own customer base. Test that, try things out, see what happens. So I'm going to mention a few quick notes about this data because we're seeing a lot of interest in people trying to understand what this visibility looks like, what it means. And I think it's helpful for people to understand what the ins and outs of are, what the pros and cons are. This QR code is the QR code also for my slides, so you can get all of it. I just wanted to throw it up there so you can have time before the end of my presentation. But one of the things that is not often realized is that a lot of people use the APIs. ChatGPT is a great example. It gets used everywhere. The data that you get from the ChatGPT API at the model level is the same as what you'll see in the UI. But the minute you need citations or links, you're not going to get the same data. You're not going to get the links from that. They do have a search API, but that's a little bit more used for agents. It's still not going to be the same results. So what that means is in order to get this data, you have to scrape the UI. And they do not make it easy. We'll put it that way. So when you're looking to understand what is relevant for your brand, you can do direct model monitoring through the API. Pretty easy to get that going. But if you need the link data, you're going to have to figure out a way to scrape it or work with someone that's scraping it. And like I said, they have very aggressive anti-bot, anti-scraping measures in place. We saw this in January with what we call the SERP apocalypse, when Google blocked pretty much every SERP data collector. It was a fun couple of days. Everyone recovered, but I think what the takeaway was that this data is very valuable. It's probably one of the most valuable data assets on the planet right now. And none of these companies want people getting it. Obviously, the industry being what it is, it's going to happen, but it does add some complexity. One of the practical consequences of this is that monitoring Gen AI is currently more expensive with fewer players. I think that's going to change over time. And I think the real benefit here is you can achieve scale of monitoring by monitoring both Google and Bing, in addition to the Gen AI monitoring. Treat Google and Bing as your wide funnel, and the Gen AI monitoring is more of your targeted. Focus on priority for topics that you care about, that you believe that your audience cares about. That should be more of your iterative, agile research process. So like I just said that, and then really I think when you're looking at evaluating different capabilities, whether you build something in-house or whether you're working with an agency or whatever, look at something that can do both, because that's going to give you the best bang for your buck in terms of being able to see the full transition from that traditional search index, being able to track that data back into the Gen AI platform. So that's it. We've got a booth. I'd love to talk to anyone. Like I said, there's a QR code with slides, and I'm on X and LinkedIn, so feel free to come say hi. Thank you very much.
Demand Sphere. Limitless visual insights from the SERPs. Unlimited dashboards and users. Easy to use and easy to scale your growth to new levels.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.